Hey everyone, my name is Seth Yelorda, and I am a leadership and life coach. I work with individuals and organizations, helping them to live and lead with clarity. And in today's episode, I want to dive into a very relevant topic for all of us. As you know, the United States presidential election just concluded, and there's two camps out there. One camp is rejoicing and praising God, and the other camp is in mourning and lament. And I get it. I can understand. Today, I want to speak to you as a leader, and I want to really talk with you about how do you lead your team, and on some level, how do you lead your own life during times of uncertainty? For the last 4 or 5 months, maybe, we have been living on edge with who is going to be elected as the president, and we finally have a conclusion. And for many people, it's not the conclusion that they were hoping for. And so when you find yourself in unfamiliar territory or experiencing disappointment, the question is, how do you manage that? How do you ensure that your own emotions and that your own mindset does not cloud your judgment? This happens, obviously, it's happening on a national scale, but it also happens in our own individual lives where you might encounter some bad news, some upsetting news, maybe on the job, in your own personal life, maybe with your health or in your marriage, where you experience some challenges, some difficulty, some setbacks. And as a result, you might feel as though you have been kind of hit back, rocked back on your heels, and you're not quite sure how to go forward. Well, I want to give you just a few principles today in this episode that I really think will be helpful for you as an individual and as a leader. And the first thing I want to say is that a lot of times the temptation is to give in to our emotions. And emotions they're not bad. I'm not trying to sit here and demonize emotions to say that you should never feel sad, you should never feel upset, that you should never feel angry. That's not what I'm saying. But what I want you to do is I want you to follow your plan, not follow your emotions. Your emotions will lead you to sometimes make harsh and rash decisions. Your emotions will lead you to either withdraw or to lash out, and that often will lead you away from your plan. So when you find yourself in uncertain territory, what I really want you to think about is, what is our North Star? What has always been our North Star? And no matter what's happening in the external environment, no matter what's happening around you, whether it's who's in the White House or who's the leader of your organization, your boss, no matter what's happening around you, I want you to stick to your North Star. Now, obviously, you might have to make some adjustments and call some audibles, but don't allow your emotions to so derail you that you totally lose sight on what's most important, and that is the plan that you put in place to lead your team, to lead your family, to lead your life into a next level, to lead your family, to lead your team, to lead your organization into accomplishing a specific goal. So make sure that when you experience uncertainty and fear and anxiety and discouragement and maybe even depression creeps in, that you stick to the plan. Take a moment, breathe, exhale, but stick to the plan. I like to say that emotions are helpful because they are a 1-second signal alert that something is happening below the surface. Imagine that you tell your kid not to touch the stove. I mean, we've all told our kids not to do that. And when you were growing up, your parents probably told you not to touch a stove. And what most of us do is we, as curious as we are, maybe it's the iron, we want to see if it's hot. I remember very vividly a time when I touched the stove when I shouldn't have, and my hand stayed on a little bit too long. I didn't anticipate how hot it was going to be, and I actually burned my fingers. And what's interesting is that if I would have just, A, listened, but B, if I would have just touched it as like a half a second, a millisecond, I would have been very aware that, okay, this thing is hot, and I need to not engage. Emotions are similar to that. Emotions are kind of like that hot stove that you can touch it. You can touch anger. You can touch frustration. You can touch discouragement. You can touch fear. You can touch worry just for a half a second signal alert to let you know, okay, this thing is hot. Something else is happening. But what you don't want to do during times of uncertainty is you don't want to touch it and leave your hand on that emotion. You don't want to lean into anger. You You don't want to lean into fear. You don't want to lean into frustration. You don't want to lean into discouragement. Touch it as a 1-second signal alert that, okay, I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling worried. I'm feeling discouraged. I'm feeling frustrated. What's going on? Why am I feeling this way? What's happening below the surface? What truths am I telling myself that might not actually be true? Because I'm telling myself a story, and the story I'm telling myself is now producing a series of emotions internally, which are now going to propel me further down that pathway. And so what I want you to do is I want you to be aware of your emotions, but I don't want you to lean into your negative emotions. Be aware that, okay, I'm feeling a little uncertain. I'm feeling worried, right? Number one, what can I do about it? Do I have any control over the situation? Is there a story I'm telling myself that may or may not be true? And is the story I'm telling myself, is it serving my best self? And so I really want you to think about, as you are managing uncertainty, you've hit the wall, you've hit some resistance, you've experienced a setback, maybe some disappointment. Don't allow your emotions to take control. Yes, take a moment, exhale, breathe, relax, but then follow the plan. What is the plan for your team? What is the plan for your organization? And if the situation you've encountered has forced you to alter the plan, that's okay. Take a minute, exhale, let's recalibrate. What is our plan now going forward? So step number one, follow your plan, not your emotions. Step number two, when you're experiencing uncertainty and you're trying to manage uncertainty, what I want you to do is I want you to stay transparent. I want you to open up to your team and say, you know what, team, this is how I'm feeling. I was expecting A, we actually encountered B. I was expecting that we would go this direction, we're actually having to go in another direction. Be transparent. You don't have to gloss over how you're truly feeling. Share with your team what's happening, what the situation is, how you're disappointed, why you're disappointed, but then reinforce the plan. This morning I was scrolling on Instagram and Twitter, and I saw a lot of individuals who were hoping that Kamala Harris would win. They were making posts to their teams, and some of them are saying, hey, you know what? We're all disappointed. This is not what we wanted. We were hoping for something different. And people voted for Trump for a number of reasons, and they list some of those reasons. And some of those reasons are legitimate reasons of why people would vote for him. Fine. But what they did was they shared, you know what, team? I'm disappointed. We're all disappointed. We were hoping for something different. This is where we are. Now, this is what we're going to do. We're not going to sit in that disappointment. We're not going to wallow in that disappointment. We're going to take a moment. We're going to breathe. We're going to exhale. We're going to recalibrate, and then we're going to go forward. So step number two is really be transparent with your team. Share openly, share honestly. There is a lot of feedback going online right now, and obviously this is the day after. You'll probably be listening to this a few days after the election was announced. But there's a lot of conversation right now around why Kamala Harris didn't come out immediately to concede, and that if she was a true leader, she would have, owned the loss. She would have come out that night and she would have addressed her followers and her supporters. And I can understand that. But there's a lot that's at stake here. I can understand someone who has been so invested in this effort, in this fight, they probably just need a minute. And so, yes, you want to be open and transparent with your team. Take a minute to process yourself. You don't have to respond immediately. Now, there is a window of opportunity, and if you don't respond within that window of opportunity, people will start to fill in the gap with their own story, which may or may not serve the plan. It may or may not serve the vision. So be aware of what that window of opportunity is and make sure you communicate during that window. But when you do communicate, do so openly, do so transparently, letting people know your heart and what you're experiencing as well. So the first thing I want you to do is I want you to follow the plan and not your emotions. The second thing I want you to do is I want you to stay transparent. The third thing is, as you are managing uncertainty, both from a political standpoint, but also an organizational standpoint or a personal standpoint, you really have to curate your feed. What do I mean? That all of us, when you're swiping on Instagram or Twitter or on Facebook or on LinkedIn, your feed has been curated to send you messages. The algorithm is trying to send you messages based off of what it feels you want to see or what you are going to engage in. And you have to ask yourself, is the feed that I'm currently observing, are the voices I'm currently listening to, are the things that are coming to me, are they actually serving my highest self and helping me to follow the plan and not my emotions? So as you're managing uncertainty, I really want you to be selective of who you listen to. You might have to take a step back. You might have to unplug. You might have to turn off the television. You might have to turn off the news. You might have to shut out some friends for a little while just so that you can really get grounded. You have to be very mindful, whether it's organizational uncertainty, who are you listening to? Because often the people that we listen to, they shape our perception, they shape our perspective, they shape the story that we tell ourselves. And if we're not careful, we will tell ourselves a story that is not serving our highest self. So be very mindful as you are managing and navigating uncertainty as a leader, both personally and professionally. Who are you listening to? So first thing we want you to do is we want you to follow the plan, not your emotions. Second thing is we want you to lean into transparency. Stay transparent with your team. The third thing is I want you to curate your feed. Be very mindful of who you are listening to and the voices and influences that you let in. The fourth and final thing that I want you to do as you are managing uncertainty is I want you to embrace flexibility. Life will throw you a curveball, both at work and at home. And you have to be flexible and amiable enough to pivot, to go with the flow. Don't be so locked in to your vision that when you feel like it's not going to happen, you lose all hope. No, you have to remain flexible. You have to say, okay, you know what? This is what we were hoping for. We didn't get it. Okay, what's our plan B? All right, we now know from a political perspective, we're heading into 4 years of uncertainty. For some people, they feel like it's really uncertain. Okay, we're not sure what the road ahead will bring us, but we're going to remain flexible. We're going to remain nimble enough that if we need to pivot and if we need to shift approaches or directions, we can do that. Managing uncertainty is like trying to walk in a storm, a windstorm. You know, where I live in Southern California, there's something that we get called the Santa Ana winds, and they can blow 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds. And if we're not careful, and if you're just locked into what you're trying to do, it will literally knock you over and cause your car to swerve. And so you have to remain flexible and nimble enough so that you can adjust and flow with the wind as the wind is blowing. So I want you to really think about this. As you're managing uncertainty, both in life and at work, stick to the plan, not your emotions. Remain open and transparent with those that you lead. Make sure that you're curating your feed and you're very mindful of who you're listening to. And ultimately, I want you to stay flexible. Embrace flexibility and don't be so locked into the way you feel it has to happen. Listen, for many of us, we are walking through uncertain times, and there's a lot of apprehension and fear that many people are experiencing right now. But I just want to reassure you, as you're going through this next season, if you're in the United States, the next 4 years, or maybe in your organization, uncertain of things that are happening or organizational changes, you can successfully navigate and manage this uncertainty. It has happened before. You are able and you are capable. Follow your plan. Embrace transparency, stay flexible, and be very mindful who you're listening to, and you'll be able to do it successfully. As I hope that this episode was a blessing. I would love to hear from you. Feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or on YouTube. And if there's anything I can do to help serve your team so that you all can continue to manage the uncertainty that you might be facing, do not hesitate to reach out. You can always visit me on my website, visionclarityconsulting.com. Have a wonderful day. Peace.